come. Let's now move on and talk about the other important story of the day. Let's now talk about the state of Manipur. A prolonged violent clash between two ethnic groups, Kukis and the Meiteis, has led to widespread violence, death and displacement in the northeastern state. Even by conservative estimates, about 80 people have lost their lives. Over 40,000 have been displaced from their homes. While Kukis have been violently expelled from Imphal, there are no Meiteis who can be seen in Churachandpur or other Kuki-dominated hill districts of the state. The Home Minister, in a crucial 3-day visit, held various crucial meetings. The Union Home Minister did not mince words to warn the armed groups that any violation from the 2008 SOO peace agreement shall lead to centre withdrawing from the peace deal. This prolonged episode of violence has created deep wounds and fissures in the hill state. Peace engineered for decades, common political ground found with much difficulty, have been jeopardized with the latest tensions. With the intervention of the centre and the Union Home Minister personally monitoring the situation, can the peace be restored? Can the damage be undone? First up, a special report. After days of violence in Manipur, there came hope. Union Home Minister Amit Shah reached Imphal when the state was burning. The administration was in the dock and the trust between the communities was in tatters. The 3-day whirlwind. This visit aimed at applying a much-needed balm on the wounded state. 50-plus meeting with the civil society members, sport persons, retired bureaucrats, women groups in Imphal. Churachandpur and More met with complaints, but also showed optimism. The Meiteis in Imphal demanded NRC and strict action to ensure territorial integrity. The Kuki-dominated hill districts called for President's rule. The Home Minister heard both the sides and sought 15 days of peace to implement various steps in order to maintain law and order.
भारत सरकार विगत 1 महीने से चलती हुई हिंसा होने के कारण और हिंसा में किसकी जिम्मेदारी है, इस सभी की जांच के लिए हाई कोर्ट के चीफ जस्टिस स्तर के रिटायर्ड न्यायाधीश का न्यायिक आयोग गठित कर जांच करेगा.
The Home Minister's message was two-pronged. Security forces were told to show no mercy to the lawbreakers, and those violating the ceasefire agreement were given a stern warning. Steps were also announced to help the state come out of this crisis. The centre has announced 10 lakh each to families of those who have lost their lives. Immediate supply of about 30,000 tons of rice, adequate supply of gas cylinders, petrol and vegetables. Temporary railway stations to be made functional, helicopter service from hill districts at nominal cost, and additional medical teams on the ground. The centre also announced a new police chief, appointing Rajiv Singh for the top post. The government is keeping its fingers crossed, hoping the state starts limping back to normalcy. Well, we hope that there is peace restored very soon. Everyone who's been displaced has been offered compensation by the state and the centre. Let's talk about the political nuances of this entire settlement, the kind of efforts that the state and centre is taking. Rajat Sethi, who's a political analyst and former advisor to Manipur Chief Minister, will join us in a bit. We also have Suhas Chakma, who's the director of the Rights and Risk Analysis Group. Thongkohal Haukip, who's the assistant professor at the Centre for Study in Law and Governance at the JNU, is also with us on the broadcast. Rajat Sethi, coming to you first. The intervention by the Union Home Minister and the fact that the Union Home Minister decide to spend certain amount of time and days in the northeastern state point out to the gravity of the situation. The state has already backtracked from the agreement that was reached in 2008. Now, the centre has given a dire warning that if the armed groups don't mend their ways, then the centre can also backtrack from that entire settlement that was reached between various sides, between these armed groups, centre and the state. Whatever the Home Minister has done so far, the outreach that has happened, what the state government has done, is it enough to start the process of reconciliation and political normalcy? Rajat.
Well, Anusha, I think it's definitely, everybody in Manipur was waiting for the Honorable Home Minister to come in and be that neutral arbiter, to come in and try to find a common ground. And he ensured that he meets the shelter homes of the Kuki refugees who've been, moved away from their houses, as well as the Meitei community, Meitei people who've been, pushed away from their villages. So he ensured he went to all possible districts, all possible areas where there was conflict, and then based on his neutral assessment and assessment from his advisors and his security team, he ensured that, the future roadmap is laid forward. He has asked for 15 days. He has ensured that in these 15 days, if both the communities decide to lay down their arms, which is of paramount importance, if they lay down their arms, there will be common ground, common discussion platforms between the civil societies of both the Kuki community and the Meitei community. They can sit together and address their grievances. If the violence continues, if, for instance, the Kuki militants, continue staying away from their camps with wielding their weapons and, hiding in the jungles, then the violence will continue. Similarly, if the combing operations are not done in the valley and the weapons which have been snatched from the police are not returned back to the police, the violence will continue.
Exactly.
So if there is violence, there can be no peace whatsoever. And I think he has carefully, highlighted that this is of most importance. Second is that he has given directions that the border has to be sealed. He recognizes that illegal migrants is a very important issue and that has to be handled head on. He has ensured that in a time-bound way, the Myanmar border would be fenced.
Right.
Another thing that he said is that anybody violating the terms of the suspension of operation, he was pointing out at the Kuki militant groups that anybody who is wielding weapons and going against the letter and spirit
you rightly point out the various steps that the Union Home Minister has taken. And the Home Minister, even when he was addressing the press, I think one thing was very evident that the union government, the central government is very aware of the nuances and the sensitivities of the situation. These tensions are not new. They have simmered before the independence and have only, gotten worse with the time. It's only in the last few decades that we've been able to have certain degree of peace and normalcy. But Mr. Suhas Chakma, I'm coming to you. Right before the visit of the Home Minister, there were certain recoveries that the security personnel had made. In fact, there were reports that a huge security, threat was averted by the forces. There was a recovery of arms and ammunition that was made that were earlier stolen from the government, machinery and the headquarters. That only points out to the level at which these groups have got access to arms and ammunition, and the way the establishment is going to get it back. That's also something that we have to still figure out. Mr. Chakma.
I think it's childish to expect that somebody who have already looted the arms, they will return the arms.
Yes.
And there will be normalcy. And if you are starting with the presumption, then of course, then you are absolutely on wrong footing. I think in this particular case, the critical issue is the trust. Whether the government of Manipur, headed by Biren Singh, has the trust of both the communities. And I think the Home Minister has made it very clear that Peace Committee will be headed by the governor of the state. It basically means the Chief Minister himself is not trusted. So I think what it will depend on is who is going to be the chairman of the Judicial Inquiry Commission, who is Chief Justice, retired Chief Justice. If he is somebody from Manipur, depends on which community, it again can backfire. So I think if you look at it overall, I think the step which the Home Minister could have fully taken, I think it fell short of. I think one particular issue which has not been addressed at all is the fact that there has been ethnic cleansing, not in literal sense that you have killed the people, but the areas have been cleansed. Kukis are not in the Meitei areas, Meiteis are not in the Kuki areas. How are you going to build the trust? And that trust would depend on, not necessarily.
Mr. Chakma, can I make an interjection? You rightly said that anybody who expects the weapons to be returned, I think that's something very foolish to expect. That cannot happen. I take that point. In the same vein, with the sort of history these two particular groups have had, a violent struggle history between the Kukis and the Meiteis, is it really utopian to expect that there can be any degree of normalcy in the short to medium term? We don't know what will happen after decades, but right now it's only the intervention of the center on the state that can put a bandage to this kind of problem, sir. Would you agree?
Well, I think the center, of course, is the only acceptable arbiter in the whole process. I think where the problem is that the Home Ministry is looking at the political fallout if they take say, for example, if they take away, the chief minister and have somebody who is more acceptable. If you look at it, the only cookie MLS, they also belong to the BJP. And if you look at Biren Singh, he also belongs to the BJP. So it's an internal BJP problem. And so what the Home Minister has done is basically trying to find a way out, saying that governor will be head of the process. So you have taken cognizance of the problem, but, you have not gone to the full extent. But if you look at the history, there was no conflict between the Meiteis and the Cookies. If you look at it in 93, 94, it was between the Cookies and the Nagas. So there was no conflict whatsoever with the Cookies. And now you are trying to build a narrative that they are in influx, there needs to be NRC, there is poppy plantations. See, not one particular community is involved in it. So if you start vilifying a particular community, I don't think you are helping the narrative.
All right, Mr. Haukip, do you want to take on that point that Mr. Suhas Chakma has made? And it's an important point that he made. Because as I was sieving through the various accounts which have been written about the northeastern state of Manipur, there's also this entire argument of a certain degree of political mistrust, divisions within the present government, and how there has been a vilification of a particular community. And that perhaps is one of the reasons, one of the many reasons that we have seen this violent episode. Mr. Haukip.
Yeah, that's very much true. There has been selective targeting, selective outrages to a particular community. So people have lost complete trust in the government. And regarding this predicament, political predicament, there is a precedent. Exactly 30 years ago, there was a Meitei Pangal class, and taking the responsibility of that class, the then Chief Minister R.K. Dorendro stepped down, and efforts were made to restore trust between the two communities. The same thing has to be happened currently. There has to be a political accountability. The Chief Minister has to take responsibility and step down. And someone within the party could be selected to be the new Chief Minister, and another political dispensation in terms of certain leadership has to be brought in. And secondly, strict action has to be taken to anyone resorting to further violence. We can see it in the last.
No, but Mr. Haukip, are you saying that as far as the government is concerned, there is a deficit in the leadership confidence, the confidence that the leadership inspires from various communities? That's one of the key problems. Is that your argument, sir?
Not only between communities, distrusting the current leadership, there are also distrust among the present members of BJP legislatures. For instance, a few months back, many legislators were, camping in Delhi, asking for change in leadership, so that certain kind of, build-up that has been going on could be reduced. So there's evidently, even among the BJP legislatures, there has been mistrust, and there were attempts to change the political leadership.
And I'll come back to you, sir. And I'll talk to you about what role can the central government play in all of this. But Rajat, coming back to you, the two gentlemen who hold the subject knowledge in the domain about the political issue of the state of Manipur talk about the fact that there is a certain problem with the leadership and the kind of confidence it inspires within the various factions of the BJP as well. There is a problem, and there has been a vilification of a certain community which is problematic. To what extent can the central government address these issues which are largely prevalent at the state level? Because there's only so much that the union government can do. Rajat.
Vilification of which community? I think both communities are being equally vilified. Look at what Professor Haukip is saying. He's vilifying one community. You speak to Meitei, he will vilify the other community. So this, this partial narrative agenda setting of few people who have access to television and television discussions need not be the true narrative. You have to spend time in the valley, time in the hills to understand genuinely where the zero-sum problem is erupting from. Otherwise, you listen to people who have access to Delhi and Delhi-based press, you will never come to justice. And these people sitting in Delhi largely will conflate it with the political issues and try to belittle the genuine grouses of the communities on the ground. Does a common villager who's been, kicked out of Churachandpur, or similarly the common, cookie people who are going to offices in the valley area, they have been kicked out of Imphal Valley. Do they care who their chief minister largely is, or who their cookie leaders
No,
are? Or
Rajat, I take your point to the extent. Yes, Mr. Chakma, go ahead, make your point.
No, I think
1 second, Rajat, listen to the counterpoint, then I'll come back to you, Mr. Chakma. Yes.
Look, Mr. Rajat Sethi is vilifying both of us. And let me tell him that...
No, sir. I clarified. No, 1 second. Rajat, 1 second. Rajat, 1 second. Rajat, 1 second. Mr. Chakma, 1 second. 1 second. I have not given any panelist the right to belittle other co-panelists, right? If Rajat has made a point, that's on the merit of the case and does not reflect on the personal integrity of the two very learned men other than Rajat that I have on the broadcast. All three of you have the domain knowledge, and that is why you're sitting on the broadcast. Mr. Chakma, can we come back to the subject? Please.
Fair enough. I think see, how did the conflict start? The conflict started out of a judgment from the Imphal High Court, and a protest was taken by the All Manipur Tribal Students Unit. Now, if that protest had not turned violent, then I don't think any other problems would have started. So now, if you at this stage say that immigration is an issue, poppy cultivation is an issue, NRC is an issue, obviously you can bring in any other issue.
Right.
So when you bring these issues, whom are you focusing on? So the very fact that it started with the whole concept or whole recommendation of the Imphal High Court saying that a particular community should be considered as scheduled tribe, which is completely out of box because it's a jurisdictional function of the President of India. Nobody is focusing on that. So you are
okay. I have last few minutes on the broadcast, Mr. Hawkip. The point that Rajat is trying to make is that often the narrative is twisted in a way to suit certain political interests. The reality on the ground may be very different, and these political reasons that may be given, which is about divisions within the government or vilification of a certain community, are very piecemeal and selective arguments to make. Mr. Hawkip, please respond.
If that is a piecemeal or selective argument, then how do thousands of people, argued in different districts of Manipur in the last few months? So look into those people, they have grievance. Instead of talking, instead of addressing their grievances, you are saying that it is the elite or it is the certain classes that have grievance. No, this is not acceptable. And the government has to look into the people who elected them. And instead of addressing their grievances, you are pinpointing to certain people. No, this kind of allegations cannot be taken. And we have to address those grievances collectively, by inviting the civil society organizations.
So, Mr. Hawkip, as I come to the close of this debate, to what extent can this intervention, and a crucial one, by the union government help the prevailing situation in the state of Manipur?
Definitely, the intervention of the union government is very crucial in addressing the political solution. This has to be arrived at the earliest. Otherwise, this violence can continue, mistrust can continue, and certain mechanism has to be brought into so that people feel secure in this. In this region, people are feeling that they are a part of this country, who share certain rights, who share certain, benefits out of being associated with this great country.
Okay, so you believe that the intervention of the centre can mend the situation, at least in the interim way and perhaps in the long term as well. Mr. Chakma, I will take closing comments from you. The union government has made few things very clear, and I want to focus on one bit that the union home minister said, that if there is any further violation to the agreement of 2008, that even the central government is going to withdraw. I believe the state government has already withdrawn from that particular agreement. How crucial is that statement?
I think that's absolutely crucial, and also I think it's the government of India who should make very clear to the armed groups that you should not participate in any of these conflicts. I think the critical issue why the conflicts have started is the status of the Métis, whether they should be granted scheduled tribe status or not. Because if they are granted scheduled tribe status, obviously you will have more conflicts and no amount of peacemaking efforts will help. So now this is an issue which nobody talks about. And that is why even when the judgment came up, at that point of time, the government of India should have only clarified one thing. Look, the cookies need not worry about the recommendation of the Manipur High Court, because granting
No, I take that point, sir. I take that point, sir, that there are some various contentious issues which have not been directly addressed by the union government. And perhaps the government best understands why they have not touched upon these issues. Perhaps one reason could be that the tensions haven't really come down in many districts of the state, and we have to wait for those tensions to come down. You're aware that thousands of people have been displaced and many have also lost their lives. We'll continue talking about this critical story coming in from the northeastern state. I thank my panelists, Mr. Rajat Sethi, Suhas Chakma and Mr. Hauke. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the broadcast. With that, we're stepping into a very short break.